Hello and welcome to the Forgeborn Finishing School. Casey, Kid, and Core here. We'll be analyzing Forgeborn battles to help take your game to the next level. Hey everyone, welcome back here. Casey, Kid, and Core with a bonus Forgeborn Finishing School episode. When we drop the Onyxium strategy in our faction pairing scheduled list, one of our viewers, Rory, reached out and said he was inspired by our video to kind of go back and look through some of his decks. He knew he had a Mad Lab deck, and our video just kind of gave him some ideas, so he started looking for pairings. Threw a comment in our YouTube section, continued the conversation in Discord, and then eventually sent us some deck links, and we wanted to kind of go over those decks and give him our thoughts in our video format here. So we really appreciate him reaching out and would encourage any other viewers to do the same in the future. No promises, but if you're inspired to create something, we will also as well, if we're inspired, to give a video response back. So quick rundown on Mad Winter and more essentially the Nexus Core Prime, because one thing that is very crucial to these decks going, that Rory has kind of queued up here is the Nexus Core Prime. The Nexus Core Prime reads, your creatures in this lane are also minions. When one of your creatures is destroyed in this lane, you may play a Gizmo minion in another lane. So it's kind of saying, hey, if the creature in this lane is destroyed, you get a free Gizmo in another lane. Errata essentially is saying that has to go into an empty lane. So just kind of keep that in mind. Not that that's going to affect this deck that much, but that's something worth considering. So a couple of the decks, essentially each deck has the same blue. So we'll kind of just cut through that blue on the first one when we talk about these deck pairings. And then after that, we're solely going to focus on, the purple pairing. So this first one, the Eagles of the Shining and Making in the Thralls of the Hating Ghost. Core, if you want to just run down some of this deck list and your thoughts.
Yeah, so on this one here, the thing that stands out here is obviously the blue is going to be the same between all of them, but this one has a Drix Betrayer in it. So that's going to be the big thing that you're going to see on this one. And with all of these pairings that we're looking at, they all have Ironbeard as their Forgeborn, so we'll probably be looking at using the Nekrium Forgeborn for these.
Ironbeard didn't show up at Worlds, but storyline, but he also didn't show up here. That's what you're saying.
that's what I'm saying. I'm sure maybe you can get it to work. I just think the other ones are going to be more useful or powerful in this. So the other thing to keep in mind with the blue deck here and Mad Winter is getting the Nexus Core to flip. So you will need to have 3 minions in play for it to flip, and so neither Ironbeard is not going to help in that matter, and in this case, neither necessarily is Cersei. What we do have is the Metamind Overseer is going to be giving you an option to play a minion. Syntheta's Laboratory also gives you an option to play a minion, and then of course the Nexus Core Prime. But that's only essentially 2 cards in this blue that's going to get you minions. So now you're looking at purple to help supplement that. So in this case, we have Drix here that will be able to generate another option for a minion. So the first thing you're going to need to do to get the Mad Labs fully into operation is getting the Nexus Core flip. Drix is going to help you do that. And so that's what you'll be looking at here using those. Now it does just have other good cards in here. Boneside Reaver is always just a great utility card. Awesome underdrop, playing at any time. Certain decks, this just works really well. And then having the Shambler in the deck is just another opportunity with the Nexus Core. Destroying your creatures with Mad Winter will work as well. And then Existing Dread Maul as well, tied into the Nexus Core Prime. When you destroy a creature, being able to plop another Gizmo out. So again, some of those synergies, Distant Siphon and Grave Pact also help synergize with that Nexus Core Prime. But again, you have to get it to flip first, which might be a struggle in this deck. It's not something that's necessarily guaranteed like there are with some other pairings. What are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, I think you covered the flipping it very well. I have two additional thoughts that I want to throw in on this deck, and one you kind of covered by going over some of the cards in Virtue, but I mentioned the destruction synergy kind of right off the bat, right? Like Nexus Core Prime is just rewarding you essentially every time that you are destroying one of your creatures in that lane, essentially. So you're wanting to do that pretty often, and then what Madla Winter comes with that big payoff of destroying one of your minions to deal damage to the enemy creatures and clear them off the board. But you also, the Zithian Dreadmaw you mentioned, you can activate it to destroy that minion to get it to pop another gizmo out, and then that gizmo can be destroyed essentially by something else. Dizzy and Siphon, you can destroy that minion to gain some health, destroy that minion to pop another free card out. Grave Pact, destroy one of your creatures to give another creature -8/-8. So you got a little bit of that destruction synergy going on. I think that's very crucial to some of the Mad Lab decks, and that's why I still believe that the Onyxium pairing has the best potential for a Mad Lab deck. Not saying the other factions can't pair into it, but I think it has the highest potential. The other thing I wanted to say is that kind of the Mad Lab dream would be, the two requirements in Teda's Lab, Madla Winter, but then Drix and Apocalypse. Okay? Now, asking for all four of those to roll in a blue is just absurd. So Rory here has landed 3 of the 4 in his Aloyan deck. And so why not pair a Betrayer Drix in with a Nekrium deck with some destruction synergy? Now let's pop back over to some of that destruction synergy that I didn't fully get into yet, but one piece of that is Soul Siphon as well. So if you can get that Nexus Core Prime flipped early, you can use Soul Siphon to destroy one of your minions in the Nexus Core Prime, give a creature +5/+5, and oh, by the way, you just got another free minion. So, a lot of good things going on here. And then, really that purple is, Nekrium is just a solid loadout. I would go out on a limb and say there's only one bad card here. That's probably your Corrupt Geist. And it's not the worst bad card you can get. Because in Cycle 3, it could be a pretty big statted underdrop. You lose 5 health to block something that's going to do more than 5 damage to you and kill that creature. So you're just kind of paying some life to clear something off the board. So that's where I kind of stand here. I think this is a pretty solid pairing. Let's move on to the second one.
Yeah, so why don't you go over some of your thoughts on this pairing here first?
Yeah, I think this takes the destruction synergy and just kind of brings it to another level. So here you have the Spite Hydra, which is kind of a payoff for when you're killing your own stuff, getting you a big creature coming on the board. You have the Apparition, that you destroy your own creatures and it gets really big. At Cycle 3, this thing ends up being a 13-23, which is pretty massive. And then that's also just triggering your Nexus Core Prime. Stitcher here's a big one. Stitcher in the Syntheta's Lab lane is pretty monstrous. We've been focusing all around the Nexus Core Prime. But Syntheta's Lab, essentially you pop a Stitcher on the board, you bring back a creature, replace the gizmo on the Syntheta's Lab, get the full gizmo bonus, get your replaced creature that came from the graveyard, and then you popped a bunch of gizmos out onto the board. Very powerful combination. This one has the Dreadmaw, just like the last deck, which is great. To me, the single-handedly most powerful, destroy your own creature card in the game, Infernal Ritual. Level 3 is an absolute game ender, and you're just getting that, bonus when you're destroying your own minion on the Nexus Core Prime. So it just kind of continues with that. Where this deck, I think, brings it to the next top is the Forgeborn loadout here. So Soul Rip, if you manage to flip Nexus Core Prime early, then this is just extremely valuable. So if you can flip it before in Cycle 2, then you get to destroy one of your creatures. You play a level 1 creature for free. Essentially what you're doing is just playing that level 1 creature for free, getting an extra minion, and then really you're upgrading that level 1 to get you back on curve with extra cards. And then Army of the Damned at level 3. This is in those moments where you're playing the game and I didn't flip Nexus Core Prime. What do I do now? Well, it's guaranteed in cycle 3 at a minimum. All you got to do is have one creature in the Nexus Core Prime lane, flip this ability, you flipped it. I think this is a pretty strong one. There's a couple other, neat cards in there. Greg, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think you hit a lot of the big strong points of this deck. Particularly the Army of the Damned just guarantees that you'll be able to flip the Nexus Core in cycle 3. I know it might be a little late, but it does give you the guaranteed option, whereas the other deck doesn't. And then the Infernal Ritual is just a game-ending card, and then it does have the backup from Fraud just to increase a little bit of attack aggressive in the early stages, or it does give your zombies aggressive already, but does help in that regard. And then the Camouflage Necromancer is probably one of my favorite Necromancers. I don't know if it's the best Necromancer, but it's one of my favorite. Maybe that's just because it's in the decks that I like playing. It happens to be camouflaged. It's just another really great card in any deck, and so having it in there is really good. But I think the main points you've already kind of hit on: the Destruction Synergy, Nyx Nekia and her support for this deck, and then the Infernal Ritual.
Yeah, and that Camouflage Necromancer is just hard to kill sometimes.
Yep.
So, awesome. Let's jump over to the third one here.
Yeah, so on this third one here, we have another Cersei here with the Soul Siphon. Again, we've kind of talked about that with the Nexus Core Prime, Death Touch, Life Drain. You'll be using this. Now this one does have the Stitcher as well, pairing off of kind of what we've discussed earlier. The Scourge Hydra, again, if you're able to destroy your own creature or your opponent destroys it, again, using that Destruction Synergy for your own benefits. And then again, the Grave Pact is in there as well. Bone Size Reaver is always just a great underdrop to use. So again, a lot of these similar things here. Devouring Harvester is an interesting card in this as well. You do have 4 Scientists in the deck, and then 3 Beasts for the Soul Reap. I think this deck is maybe a little bit underpaired than the other two. But what are your thoughts, Ryan?
Yeah, I think you kind of said it there. Like, it's got a lot of things going for it. It just maybe misses on a couple of levels. You mentioned the 4 Scientists. Potentially not enough to make the Harvester extremely relevant. The Devouring's an awesome keyword, but this is actually a deck where you're probably not playing a lot of spells. You get your Exalts down, and then a lot of the creatures are going to do the talking for you, I think, here with those interactions and abilities that they have. So I think this one is stacked full of good cards, but just kind of misses on some of the levels that the other two hit. I really do like the Cersei loadout of this one. It's not too bad at all. But I think that, in my opinion, of the 3, we kind of I would safely put this on the 3rd tier.
Yeah, and the other thing we didn't mention about this one is there's nowhere in the Nekrium package that you're adding to this that gives you minions besides Om Nom Nom.
Yep.
Right? So that's your only option for an additional minion in this, which can be situational. So not as reliable as the Infernal Ritual or Drix. So that's also something to keep in mind. How would you rank these 3 decks as far as which you think is probably the best? And then we've kind of already, and then which one's the second best? We've already kind of, I think, both agreed that this last one we talked about is probably the worst of the 3. I think it just doesn't have as much going for it.
Yeah, so the first 2, I'm going to go off and say that I think the way I'm going to rank these is based on consistency. So when I look at a competitive deck or making the best deck possible, I don't look at the perfect draw or the perfect outcome, what I like to refer to as ceiling. I look at decks that has what I refer to as floor, highest floor, so very consistent. I believe that the deck with the Betrayer Drix has the highest ceiling, but has more potential issues. So I'm going to rate the deck that I would look at trying out first is the deck with the Camouflage Necromancer. I think this has the potential to be the consistently best deck. And then the second one I'm going to do is with the Betrayer Drix. And I think there's a crucial point here that I want to add, is that this deck is stacked with cards that you want to level. and it has the drone to help you with that. But outside of that, you're going to find your place in a competing place where you might have to play your Madla Winter and not level your Drix. Or you want to get your Apocalypser out, but you have to play your Synthetis Lab. And I think that's going to cause you to get some of those cards you need to lean on too heavily, under-leveled. Whereas the deck with the Camouflage Necromancer just has value play after value play after value play.
Yeah, I'm not going to disagree with you on this one. I would lean towards the Camouflage Necromancer and the Infernal Ritual. I mean, you're kind of looking at, Drix. You have your Apocalypser, which is going to be the same in both decks, but in these two, you're comparing kind of the Drix and the Infernal Ritual and the Necromancer as your finishing. You're going to end games off of those two cards, and you're going to have Drix the end games off the other one. I think you just have a little bit more versatility, and then, as you said, consistency. And I think consistency is the key. It's much more easier to flip that Nexus Core using the Infernal Ritual, and then also you're guaranteed it in cycle 3. I will say, though, that the Nyx Nexia on the cycle 4 is, not as good as Army Commander. So, as you mentioned, the ceiling on the Drix deck is way better. But I think you can get to, I think with the Nyx Nexia deck, or however you pronounce that, you're looking to end games in cycle 3. You're going to be more consistently doing that, whereas the Drix deck is probably going to be occurring in cycle 4.
Yeah. I got to say, I thought we were going to disagree on this one. Looks like we ended up in the same boat, interestingly enough. You're right, that Dark Summoning is a little rough. For sure. All right, I think that wraps it up here for us. We appreciate you guys checking out this video, and we really appreciate Rory reaching out with the comments and the Discord discussion and giving us a chance to talk about these awesome decks. I am super jealous that he has this Mad Lab deck with an Apocalypser and a drone. Just looks like a really fun deck, Rory. I hope you have some fun with it, and hopefully we can throw it on the digital table together sometime. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks for attending this lesson of the Forgeborn Finishing School. If you like this video, please subscribe, comment, or consider donating to our Patreon account. We look forward to our next lesson.